You won't believe how far someone can go when the world underestimates them. A teenage girl, daughter of a janitor, walks into an elite engineering firm, surrounded by experts with degrees and decades of experience. Nobody gives her a second look, until the CEO himself puts her on the spot, daring her to fix a machine even his best engineers couldn't solve. What happens next leaves an entire boardroom speechless and changes more than just a company's future. Her name was Kira Nolan. 17, high school senior, quiet but observant. She didn't speak unless she had to, and when she did, she made it count. Her father, Greg Nolan, worked the night shift cleaning offices at Tarantech Industries, one of the top private engineering firms on the East Coast. He'd been with the company for over 15 years. Never late, never absent, never promoted. Kira had visited the building a few times when her dad forgot something or picked up an extra weekend shift. She didn't care much for the corporate types in their designer suits, but she loved machines. She loved how things worked. Since she was 10, she'd been reverse engineering kitchen appliances just to see if she could put them back together. Faster, quieter, better. It was during one of those late Saturday afternoons when everything changed. Her dad had to fix a mistake one of the temp workers made, something with floor wax or a chemical spill. He brought Kira along, promising it'd only take 15 minutes. She sat in the hallway near the research wing, earbuds in, sketchbook on her lap, drawing diagrams of a portable cooling unit she had been rebuilding from scratch. That's when she overheard two engineers talking. Fifth prototype failed again. The drive alignment keeps jumping off axis after 30 seconds. I told Victor that housing design was flawed. You can't stabilize a dual motor system with a single torque rod and expect the sensors to stay calibrated. But the CEO won't approve another design round until we get this one working. He said one more failure, and we're scrapping the project. Kira's pen froze in midair. She had seen a similar alignment issue before, on a motorized scooter she rebuilt for her neighbor's kid last summer. Her mind started working. She flipped the page and began drawing a basic correction module using a split-mount tension coil and thermal gel dampers. It was rough, but she knew it could stabilize the axis shift without redesigning the entire casing. She hadn't even realized someone was standing over her shoulder until a shadow darkened the page. "You like drawing engines, huh?" The voice was deep and polished, carrying that same cold charm corporate execs wore like a second skin. Kira looked up and saw a tall man in a tailored gray suit with a sharp jawline and eyes that didn't blink. It was him, Victor Langston, the CEO. Kira nodded once, keeping her sketchbook close. "Just ideas. Mind if I see that?" She hesitated, then handed it over. He flipped through 3 pages, then stopped, eyebrows tightening. "You know what you just drew?" Kira shrugged. "A stability fix." He narrowed his eyes. "For the prototype in the lab?" Kira blinked. "You mean the one that keeps going off axis?" Now he looked interested. Not impressed. Interested. "You think you can fix it?" Kira stared back. "I don't think it's impossible." That's when he smirked. The kind of smirk people give right before they bet money you'll fall flat on your face. "You know what?" he said. "Let's test that." Victor waved over one of the engineers. "Bring the failed module from Lab 3. "Sir?" "You heard me. Let's see if the janitor's daughter can fix what your team couldn't." The hallway went dead silent. Kira didn't even flinch. 10 minutes later, the module was sitting on a side table, still warm from its last failed run. Kira rolled up her sleeves. She asked for a toolkit, tape, and something cold. "Even a slushy pack," she added. The engineers watched like hawks, whispering behind their hands. One even chuckled under his breath. But within 20 minutes, she had opened the module, adjusted the alignment, recentered the torque shaft using parts from an old stabilizer, and insulated the entire chamber using a gel pack she wrapped with electrical tape. She handed it over without saying a word. Victor passed it to his lead technician. "Run it." The technician glanced at Kira, then at Victor, then walked it back to the lab. Nobody spoke during the wait. Not even Kira. 2 minutes later, the technician came sprinting down the hallway. "It held," he gasped. "All sensors green, no alignment loss, not even a flicker." The room erupted with confused murmurs. One engineer stepped forward and looked Kira up and down. Where did you learn that?" Kira shrugged. "Watched my dad fix machines for years. Sometimes I help." Victor was still staring at her. For once, not with amusement, but with calculation. He crossed his arms. "You solved in 30 minutes what my team couldn't figure out in 6 weeks. Kira met his gaze. "Because they looked at it like it was supposed to work. I looked at it like it already failed." That line shut everyone up. Victor turned to his assistant. "Bring her tomorrow." The assistant blinked. "Sir?" "She's joining the development team." "But she just saved us $2 million in design delays. I don't care what she is." Kira didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She just picked up her sketchbook and followed her dad out the door. But that night, in her room, she couldn't stop staring at the folded paper Victor had handed her as she left. A formal offer, not an internship, a contract, full compensation, technical assistant title, custom access badge. Start date: Monday. Kira didn't tell anyone at school what happened that weekend. No announcements, no posts, no bragging. Not even her best friend knew. On Monday morning, instead of heading to her first period math class, she was standing in front of Tarantech's front desk in jeans and a navy hoodie, holding the access badge the CEO had given her. The security guard looked confused. She flashed the badge anyway. The scanner beeped green. Inside the elevator, Kira's heart thudded just once. She wasn't nervous. She was alert. She knew this wasn't a favor. It wasn't charity. It was a test. And people were going to be watching, waiting for her to screw up so they could say, "Told you so." The doors opened to the 6th floor, product engineering. The atmosphere shifted immediately. No cubicles, just long workbenches, tech stations, 3D printers, and the constant hum of innovation. Engineers buzzed between stations, testing prototypes, running simulations, adjusting code. Every face that turned to look at Kira had the same expression: confusion, followed by judgment. A tall woman with a tablet walked toward her. "You must be Kira," she said. Her voice clipped. "Yeah. I'm Marina Dale, project lead for all T-Drive development. You'll be assisting in prototype calibration for now. No solo access to builds. No unauthorized testing. We have standards here." Kira nodded once. Understood. She was handed a tablet with a live schematic, a locker code, and a lanyard. Just like that, she was part of the team, well, technically. The next few days were cold, mechanical, and tense. She wasn't invited to team meetings. She wasn't assigned to real tasks, just diagnostics, component checks, thermal reads. Nobody spoke to her unless they had to. It was clear they were uncomfortable with her being there, and even more uncomfortable that the CEO had personally vouched for her. By Wednesday, the whispers started. "She's only here because Victor's trying to make a statement. She probably cheated on that fix. There's no way a kid did that in 30 minutes. She's Greg's kid, right? The janitor? Kira heard it all. She didn't react. Not once. But every insult added fuel to her internal fire. She stayed late, watched how the systems ran, took notes no one asked her to take. When the lab emptied out for the night, she stayed behind with permission to run minor diagnostics. Clean, record, observe. That's when she started noticing patterns in the code of the AI-controlled propulsion module. The test engineers had been so focused on torque and alignment that nobody realized the sensor firmware had a timing delay. It caused the calibrator to compensate after a shift instead of preventing it. Kira rewrote a sample script. She didn't upload it, just simulated it. The results were smooth, clean, efficient. She submitted the report to Marina the next morning. Marina didn't say a word, just nodded once. But the next week, that same script was uploaded to the new prototype. No credit, no mention. But Kira didn't care. She was learning. Meanwhile, Victor Langston was keeping an eye on everything. From board meetings to lab reviews, he tracked performance metrics closely. And Kira's name kept showing up on the back end of efficiency improvements, even when nobody mentioned her aloud. Then came the Tech Expo announcement. Tarantech was set to unveil its latest T-Drive hybrid propulsion unit in just 5 weeks. It was their biggest reveal in 3 years, with buyers, investors, and press flying in from across the country. Everything needed to be perfect. But there was a problem. The T-Drive unit, version 5, was still unstable under load. Torque deviation, overheating, power drainage. All small issues, but together they posed a serious risk of public embarrassment. Marina's team worked around the clock. Engineers were getting pulled from other departments. Budgets were shifted. Tension in the lab tripled overnight. Then came the meltdown. A senior engineer named Nolan Tressler, no relation to Kira, accused her of modifying test parameters behind his back. Claimed she tampered with a build script, which led to a false positive on one of the early simulations. Kira was stunned. She hadn't touched that module. She had barely spoken to Nolan, but suddenly she was called into HR. Questions were asked. Logs were reviewed. Access histories were dug up. Victor called for a private meeting. "Kira," he said, arms crossed, "why is a senior engineer pointing fingers at you?" She didn't flinch. "Because the module passed my script simulation 2 weeks ago. His failed." And he didn't want to admit it. Victor leaned in. "So you're saying he lied?" "Number, I'm saying he panicked." Victor stared at her for a long moment. "I believe you," he said finally. "But this company doesn't run on faith. Prove it." Kira left the office, returned to the lab, and asked Marina for direct access to the malfunctioning unit, just for a night. After a moment's hesitation, Marina agreed, with one condition. Whatever Kira found, she had to submit it in a full written report by morning. That night, Kira worked for 6 hours straight. She rechecked the alignment sequence, recalibrated the pulse stabilizer, then dug into the code, again. And there it was, hidden in the subroutines. A misaligned feedback delay between the thermal core and torque response system. Something tiny, but critical. She patched it, logged the change, and ran a silent simulation. Perfect output. Not just stable, optimal. At 6:42 a.m., she submitted her report with the simulation logs attached. By 8 a.m., Nolan Tressler had resigned. The next day, Marina called Kira to her station and handed her a folder. "Effective immediately," she said. "You're no longer an assistant. You're on the core T-Drive dev team." Kira blinked. "Just like that?" "No," Marina replied. Not just like that. You earned it. And they finally can't ignore that anymore. For the first time since she started, Kira felt the room shift, not with hostility, with respect. She was no longer just the janitor's daughter. She was the girl who saved their flagship project, twice. But what nobody knew was that Victor Langston had something bigger in mind for her. Something that would challenge not just her skills, but her entire belief in who she was and what she could become. And that test was coming sooner than she realized. Kira's first week on the core team felt like stepping into a new universe. Meetings that used to happen behind glass walls now included her. Problems no one trusted her with were now directly assigned. People who avoided eye contact were now asking her for input. She didn't brag. She didn't gloat. She did what she always did. Showed up early, stayed late, and let her work speak louder than anything else. But while the lab dynamics were shifting, the pressure was still mounting. Tarentech's Tech Expo was now just 4 weeks away. The T-Drive prototype was in better shape, but one massive challenge remained: real-world integration. Until now, everything had been tested in controlled environments: labs, test benches, simulations. But real conditions meant unpredictable terrain, driver behavior, and mechanical stress far beyond anything they could simulate. Victor wanted to install the engine into a functioning test vehicle and run it through a full 2-week road simulation. If the engine held, it would be the future of hybrid propulsion. If it failed, the entire project would be scrapped. The only issue? No one had a fully compatible test vehicle. The latest model with the required mount alignment and thermal exchange frame hadn't been released yet, and building one from scratch would take 6 months, time they didn't have. That's when Kira made a bold move. In a meeting with the lead team and Victor himself, she raised her hand. "There is one vehicle that could be adapted," she said. Victor raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Kira pulled up the specs of an old Tarentech prototype vehicle, model CX-7, built 3 years ago and shelved because of faulty energy distribution systems. "It's collecting dust in the back bay, but the chassis is perfect. If we remove the old hybrid core and adapt the frame with some new components, it can be ready for a live test within 2 weeks." There was silence in the room. Everyone stared at the screen, then at her. "You're talking about reworking a retired prototype?" one engineer asked, almost amused. "That's a gamble." "It's better than no test at all," Kira said calmly. Victor gave her a long look. Then he nodded once. "Do it. But if it doesn't run, the board will know who to blame." She understood. She wasn't scared. Kira spent the next 11 days buried in that vehicle. With a small team, she dismantled the old drive core, restructured the mount brackets, rerouted the wiring harness, and rebuilt the cooling system from scratch using a new cross-flow layout she had designed from her apartment a year earlier. Just as a concept. Every piece of that car felt like a part of her story, rejected, repurposed, underestimated, and finally given another chance. On the 12th day, they ran it. For hours, no overheating, no torque deviation, no vibration instability. The readouts were better than any simulated test had produced. Marina double-checked the data and confirmed the results in front of Victor and the entire team. "It's not just working," she said slowly. "It's outperforming every projection." Victor stared at the numbers. Then he looked at Kira. "Pack it," he said. "It's going to the expo." The team cheered. Kira didn't. Not because she wasn't happy, because she knew what was coming next. The expo wasn't just about showing a product. It was about defending it, standing behind it. And Kira knew she was the only one who could explain the new build. Sure enough, 3 days before the event, Victor called her into his office again. "Everyone here agrees you're the reason that car is running," he said. "And they also know that means you're the best person to explain it to the press, the investors, and the industry reps." Kira's pulse quickened. "You want me to present?" "I want you to lead." It wasn't a request. That night she went home in silence. Her dad noticed right away that something was different. "You okay, kid?" he asked, pausing in the middle of unloading the dishwasher. "They want me to present," she said quietly. "The whole building, the core system, all of it, in front of everyone." Her dad dried his hands, walked over, and leaned on the counter. "And what's the part that scares you?" he asked. "That I'll mess up, that I'll stutter, that they'll look at me like I don't belong there." He nodded slowly. "Do you belong there?" She didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I do." "Then let them look. Let them listen. Just show them what you've already proven to yourself." She breathed in, breathed out, and nodded. 3 days later, the expo hall was packed. Dozens of industry leaders, investors, and executives from rival firms. Cameras everywhere, screens flashing, microphones pinned. The spotlight was brutal. Victor stepped on stage first. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this year we present not just a new product, but a new standard. And the mind behind that standard is someone I personally vouched for. Someone who proved that talent can come from anywhere. Please welcome Kira Blake." A murmur ran through the crowd as she walked up. Young, unfamiliar, definitely not who they expected. She stepped to the podium, looked up, and delivered. No stuttering, no rambling. She broke down the propulsion unit's design, explained the adaptive core algorithm, presented the thermal redistribution system, and showed live performance metrics with comparative analytics from top-tier competitors. The audience didn't move. Some didn't blink. By the time she finished, the applause didn't start immediately. It built, then erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters stood. Investors leaned forward, eager, buzzing. Victor walked up beside her, microphone in hand. "One more thing," he said. "Kira's been leading the T-Drive project for less than a month. Imagine what she'll do in a year." Kira stepped back, stunned. She hadn't known he'd say that. She hadn't even known he believed that. After the event, representatives from 2 rival firms approached her. Both offered job interviews. One offered a relocation bonus. She declined them all. Her story at Tarantech wasn't done. Not yet. What nobody realized was that her greatest challenge wasn't the T-Drive. It was the internal war still brewing behind closed doors. Because not everyone was happy about her success, and one person, in particular, was about to make that crystal clear. The morning after the expo, Kira was back at her desk before sunrise. Her badge access had already been upgraded, and a small note had been taped to her monitor. "Well earned. Victor." She sat down, opened the post-expo debrief documents, and started working like nothing had changed. But everything had. People treated her differently now. Some with genuine respect, others with a careful distance, like she had somehow skipped a rung in the company ladder. Not everyone was celebrating her rise, and one of those people made himself known that same afternoon. Jacob Lane, lead engineer of Tarantech's Energy Systems Division. Someone who'd been with the company for over a decade. A man who had never spoken to Kira directly, even when she'd passed him in the hallway. He showed up at her desk with a fake smile and a sealed folder. "Heard you're the new golden girl," he said smoothly. Kira stayed professional. Just doing my part." He dropped the folder on her desk. "Then do your part with this. The board's looking to fast-track integration of the T-Drive into our next-gen vehicle series, but they're asking for input on something that isn't your specialty." She opened the folder. It was a set of vehicle schematics, prototype integration designs, all flawed. Not obviously, but enough to guarantee a system collapse if implemented. The kind of trap only an expert would catch. He watched her with narrowed eyes. She looked back at him and closed the folder slowly. "Is this an internal test or a sabotage?" He leaned closer. "It's a reminder. There's a chain of command here, and you've skipped some links." Kira didn't flinch. "If there's an issue with my role, take it up with Victor." "Oh, don't worry," Jacob said, turning to leave. "I will." The rest of the day, tension crackled in the air like static. Kira focused on her real work, but word spread quickly that Jacob was stirring dissent, questioning her qualifications, her authority, and the way she was paraded around like some PR miracle. Victor didn't comment publicly. He let things unfold. But Kira knew better than to rely on silence. She spent her nights refining her research, documenting every technical adjustment she had made to the T-Drive, cross-referencing it with pre-existing reports, and logging all her processes in official engineering reports. By the following Monday, she had a fully detailed operations binder, evidence of her contributions, leadership, and technical accuracy, something no one could dispute. That's when Victor called her in again. "Jacob filed a formal complaint," he said, tossing a copy of it onto his desk. "Claims you made unsanctioned changes to the prototype vehicle, that you bypassed safety review protocols." Kira handed him her binder without a word. He flipped through the pages, expression unreadable. 15 minutes passed in silence. Finally, he shut the binder. "I've worked with Jacob for a long time," Victor said. "He's talented, he's thorough, but he's also territorial and threatened. This binder?" He tapped it. "It's bulletproof. I'll take care of the complaint. You don't need to worry." She stood. "Actually, I do. Because if I don't worry, people like him win. And if I stay quiet, they'll say I had help. That it was all luck. That I don't really know what I'm doing." Victor looked at her carefully. "You want to prove it publicly?" "I want to remove all doubt." He smiled slightly. "I might have just the way to do that." That week, Tarantech announced a live challenge at their headquarters, an open demonstration of the T-Drive's potential. A full team of engineers, executives, and industry reps would be in attendance. The event would be streamed live to stakeholders across the globe. But the twist? The team running the test would be split into two groups: the company veterans and the new generation. Victor's idea: Kira would lead one team, Jacob would lead the other. Each would be tasked with designing and executing a functional T-Drive-based energy system for a theoretical vehicle setup. Same time limit, same resources, same exposure. Victor called it the dual core test. The media called it the showdown. Kira didn't back down. The day of the challenge, the entire building buzzed with energy. Engineers were whispering. HR staff hovered near the test floor. Even the CEO's assistant was watching the live feed on her tablet. Kira walked into the bay with her small team, a mix of junior engineers, analysts, and one technician from the original CX-7 rebuild. Jacob arrived with his polished group of department heads and senior developers. Both teams were handed the specs. The goal: to build a compact, scalable energy system using the T-Drive prototype that could power a high-output electric vehicle model with minimal heat loss. They had 6 hours. Kira's team didn't start with flashy tools or big declarations. They started with questions: strategy, system maps, heat dispersion modeling. Jacob's team jumped in fast, confident, loud, trying to overwhelm. Halfway through the time limit, Jacob's team was ahead in wiring, but Kira's was ahead in logic. Streamlining redundancies, reducing mass, rerouting voltage paths for better cooling distribution. With 1 hour left, Jacob's system flickered on. Lights glowing, fans spinning, cheers erupted from his side. He grinned, looked directly at Kira. "What's the holdup?" he called out. "You need a manual?" Kira didn't respond, because her system didn't need to flicker, it just needed to work. 35 minutes later, Kira's team powered up their system. Silent hum. Perfect voltage. Zero lag. A temperature drop of 17% lower than Jacob's. The numbers were undeniable. When the official results were projected onto the big screen, the crowd fell quiet. Then came the applause. Victor stepped forward. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. The data said it all. Jacob left without a word, and for the first time, no one questioned whether Kira belonged. That evening, she found herself on the rooftop patio alone, overlooking the city skyline. Her dad called, as he always did when something big happened. "So," he said, "you crushed it?" "Yeah," she replied. "It's over." "No," he said, chuckling softly. "This is just the beginning." He wasn't wrong, because that same night, an investor from a rival firm reached out, not to recruit her, but to buy her design, for more than she'd ever seen in her life. But money wasn't the only offer coming her way, and some would come with strings attached. Big strings. Kira didn't sleep much that week. After the challenge, offers flooded her inbox. Private firms, government tech labs, foreign investors. One company even proposed to buy out her entire blueprint for the T-Drive integration, offering her a position with a blank check and a leadership title. But Kira wasn't chasing titles. She had built something real, something with integrity. Victor called her in again, this time not in his office but in the executive boardroom. "The board wants you to lead our new vehicle division," he said. "We're restructuring, and we need someone who can think 5 steps ahead, not just follow instructions." She looked around at the seats once filled with people who never gave her a second glance. "Are you sure they're ready for me?" she asked quietly. "They better be," he replied. "Because you're not waiting for permission anymore." Kira accepted, but only under one condition. She wanted a full mentorship program for junior engineers from non-traditional backgrounds. Kids like her, with skills, not privilege. The board agreed. 6 months later, the new Tarantech Design Hub opened, led by Kira. The walls were filled with innovation, not ego, and her name was now known not just for fixing an engine, but for changing the culture of an entire company. Her father, still the same quiet, kind janitor, retired that year. Not because he had to, but because his daughter told him it was time to rest. And he finally did. Kira never forgot where she started. She never needed to pretend to be someone she wasn't. Because when you know what you're capable of, the world eventually has no choice but to see it too. The same people who once looked down on her now looked up to her. And the engine that no one believed could run. It didn't just run. It rewrote the future.